The 7-year-old boy stared fixedly at the night sky, his small hands clutching the rosary his grandmother had given him. "God," he whispered through tears, "why is it so hard to make you love me?" 20 years had passed since that night, but the question still echoed in his heart. Only now it had transformed into a silent scream that threatened to tear his soul in half. Between the consuming fire and the liberating peace, there is a no man's land, a place where thousands of people wander every day, caught between the fear of a punishing God and the hope of a loving Father. This is the story of one of those souls.
Dear Caio, there are moments in life when silence becomes too heavy to carry alone. This is one of those moments. My hands tremble as I write this letter, not just from the fear that consumes me, but from the shame of admitting that perhaps I have lost something too precious to recover. Remember when I told you about that day? The moment I finally understood what it meant to be in Christ. It was as if every word about grace had gained color and life for the first time. The scriptures were no longer just letters on a page. They were like fresh water to a soul dying of thirst. I discovered that I didn't need to climb the mountain of perfection to reach God. In Christ, I was accepted, loved, justified, not by my works, not by my efforts, but through faith in the one who loved me first. But now it all seems like a distant dream. A dream from which I woke too early, only to find myself back in that familiar place of fear and condemnation. Each morning is a battle. I wake up with my heart racing, as if I'd run a marathon in my sleep. The air feels heavy, loaded with questions I can't answer. I feel like I'm living in two parallel worlds. Caio. In one, I'm a beloved son, free, justified by grace. In the other, I'm a fugitive, always looking over my shoulder, waiting for the punishment that will surely come. It's like a spiritual roller coaster that never stops. One moment I'm at the top, feeling God's love as real as the air I breathe. The next, I'm falling into an abyss of doubt and condemnation. The nights are the worst. I lie in bed and thoughts begin their macabre dance. What if you never really had true faith? What if it was all just passing emotion? What if you're like Esau, seeking with tears a blessing you can never find again? I try to hold on to the truths I learned. I repeat to myself the words about grace, justification, unconditional love, but they seem to slip through my fingers like fine sand, leaving only the empty echo of promises that perhaps were never really mine. This week, while listening to your message about Hebrews 12, my heart stopped. It was as if every word was describing my journey, from Mount Sinai to Mount Zion, and somehow back to the mountain of fire and storm. I feel trapped in an endless cycle, sometimes peace and overflowing faith, sometimes suffocating fear and paranoia. One moment believing in God's unconditional love, the next doubting even His existence. I'm tired, Caio. Tired of fighting, tired of doubting, tired of waking up every morning with this weight in my chest that feels like it will crush me. It's as if I'm knocking on a door that is closed, begging to enter, but finding only silence on the other side. Please help me understand. Can someone who truly knew grace lose it like this? Was my faith never true from the beginning? How can I be sure I'm not just another who began in the spirit and ended in the flesh?
My dear friend, as I read your letter, my heart ached with each word. Not just for the pain that overflows from your lines, but because I recognize in them a pattern that I've seen destroy the peace of so many precious souls. If you had truly understood the essence of what I've always taught, you wouldn't be caught in this web of fears and accusations. But don't despair. Sometimes we need to get lost to find the true way back home. What you're experiencing isn't a loss of grace, but a psychological return to old thought patterns. It's like a program still running in the background of your mind, an echo of the old religion that insists on playing its music of guilt and condemnation. You're not returning to Mount Sinai. You're just hearing the thunder of a storm that has already passed. Let me be clear about something. Those rudiments mentioned in Hebrews aren't your moral or human errors. They're not your failures, your doubts, or your fears. The rudiments were the attempt to return to the law as a means of salvation and sanctification, to transform the relationship with God into a checklist of tasks to complete. It's like trying to pay for a gift that was already given freely. Not only unnecessary, but an offense to the giver. You are not Esau. Stop torturing yourself with that comparison. Your anguish doesn't come from the Spirit of God. It comes from a soul wounded by toxic religion, by years of conditioning that made you believe God's love depends on your performance. It's like an old wound that hurts when the weather changes. It's not a sign of rejection. It's just the memory of past pain. Much of what you learned about God, Jesus, and the Bible in traditional religion is, forgive my frankness, from the devil. Yes, you read that correctly. The accuser, that's the enemy's role. He is the relentless prosecutor who presents your failures as evidence for condemnation. Jesus, on the other hand, is your advocate. He doesn't just defend you. He has already paid your bail, already secured your freedom, already assured your acquittal. Stop trying to fight these ghosts that haunt you. The more you try to overcome them, the more real they seem to become. You know why? Because their power lies precisely in the fact that they don't exist. They're just shadows projected by your fears, fed by your attention. It's like trying to box with your own shadow. The more you fight, the more exhausted you become, without ever really hitting anything. The real danger isn't in your errors or doubts, but in the possibility that these negative thoughts might take deep root in your mind. It's like a weed seed. If you keep watering it with your attention and worry, it can grow until it chokes out the flowers of grace that God planted in your heart. Therefore, with the authority Jesus gave me as a minister of His Word, I declare to you, stop this habit of self-justification. Stop trying to deserve what is already yours. By right in Christ, you are saved. Not because you feel it, not because you deserve it, not because you can keep your faith constantly strong, but because Jesus is faithful even when you aren't. You are forgiven, not just of past sins, but of present and future ones too. You are justified in Jesus, not by your works, but by the complete work of the cross. This isn't my opinion. It isn't a pious wish. It isn't a vague hope. It's the unchanging truth of the gospel. Take a deep breath. Release these chains you've placed on your own wrists. Allow yourself to be free, not because you achieved it, but because Christ achieved it for you. God's love for you isn't like a thermometer that rises and falls according to your performance. It's a fact as constant as the sun that rises every morning, even when clouds hide it from our view.